Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ontario Party candidate for Peterborough and Kawartha, a member of the Veterans for Freedom Steering Committee, Captain Retired Tom Marazzo.
This is a lot harder than it looks. Before I start, there are some people I'd like to acknowledge in the room. And I'd like Jeremy McKenzie to stand up for a moment.
Marazzo is infinite.
We have a lot of other very important people in this audience that throughout my journey with the convoy have really touched my life and touched all of yours. Danny Bulford's sitting over there. My friends Ray and Monique are here, and they usually wish to remain very hidden from public view. But they hosted an amazing event on Sunday for a lot of people that have been fighting for freedom since this bullshit started. Can I have my coffee cup? It says Tom. Everybody else got a cool nickname. I got Tom. Yeah.
Would you prefer sir?
No. I work for a living. Gord is here. Gord? Yeah, you, Gord. Harold and Tim are here and their wives. Up you go. At the very back of the room, hiding as usual in plain sight, is Drew McGilvery right there waving. Many of you may not know who Drew is, but that's by his design. I want to reflect on some of my time in the military. And for those of you who have not served, you may not understand some of this, but for those who have, I hope this resonates with you. The smell of diesel fuel, the burn of CS gas in your nose as it simultaneously feels like your skin is being melted while trying to eat food in all-around defense. Learning to assemble an army cot without a degree in aerospace engineering, or being able to bench press 400 pounds. The nervous anticipation of DS coming to inspect your bunk. Just before moments ago, it was absolutely perfect and is now out in a pile in the hallway. Yeah, out the window. Having to walk on a line, swinging your arms like a nutcracker doll. Down the corridor on the first day of basic training. Folding the corner of toilet paper before an inspection and wondering, am I joining the army or am I being auditioned for a job at a 5-star hotel? Yeah. Waking up from sleeping and realizing you're still standing on your feet. Twice. Getting home from an exercise, and even though you wore gloves, your hands have been completely destroyed. You have bruises all over your bodies and you have no idea where they came from. Going to the field with empty pockets and returning home with a Staples store worth of stationery in all of your pockets. Finding yourself in the woods with a roll of shit tickets and a shovel, and somebody calls stand to. Embracing the suck through a simple smile or a laugh from one of your mates, and making your buddies stay humble, because you all know that ego can have devastating consequences for all of you. Your turn being assessed on your small party task and not wanting to suffer the humiliation of failing. And then you do, because of something completely out of your control that you had nothing to do with from the very moment the task started. But life in the military has a way of punishing you first and then teaching you the lesson after, because you needed to learn that lesson. There are so many examples of these little vignettes that I could share with you, and they're the things that bind us all. This is how we create a common language. This is how we come together, like we did in Ottawa. Other veterans that I didn't know before we got there, but we just meshed together because of a brotherhood. I asked Drew because Drew's Navy, and I asked him for a couple of things, and he said, let's just reflect on the diesel fuel. The smell of diesel puts you back on a deployment. It puts you back in the field on an operation. That one little scent. And I know a lot of you know what I'm talking about. But I asked Drew, I said, well, what do I say about the Air Force? He goes, that's easy. That's easy.
Powder room.
Hotels, and Starbucks. Done. I joined the reserves as an infantry when I was only 16 years old, but I was in my 17th year, so I qualified. I spent 8 years in the reserves as a reservist. I did 5 years in a reconnaissance platoon. And I'm incredibly proud that I got to spend my time with the members of that reconnaissance platoon when I was very young. In 1996, I was on the second ever Assault Pioneer course that was offered to the reserves. And on that course, I met a really amazing person named James Topp. This always happens to me. We stayed in contact over the years, but as is almost tradition, you go almost a decade and you don't see them, but when you do, it feels like it was yesterday. Ottawa needs to know the kind of man that is walking towards them right now. They need to know what he has given to this country. I know the stories because he told them. He spent a year in Bosnia, and it was absolutely horrific. The way he used to describe it to me, he said the first 3 months were boring. The next 6 months were terrifying every waking moment of his life, and then the last 3 were boring again. And he suffered. He suffered when he got home, at a time when nobody acknowledged the suffering of veterans. They do now, but when it was James's turn, they didn't. I want to make sure Ottawa knows the character of man that is actually marching across this country to them now. So in 1998, I took my commission and I became a combat engineer officer. And I was posted at 2 CER in Peterborough in 2000. As an officer, I quickly learned that I was always going to be the bridesmaid, but never the bride. And that meant that I wasn't going to get to do the cool stuff like EOD, Combat Diver, Pathfinder. But wow. PER season was a wonderful time of year. As some of you may also know, officers eat their young. Despite that, I always felt like I had a unique opportunity to be a good officer from my experience of being in the ranks. And a year ago, I got into a discussion with a female Army officer because I was stupid enough to take the bait. She walked into my home, and on her shirt it said, "Feminism is my second favorite F word." I took the bait. You can imagine how stupid that was and how quickly that conversation deteriorated. At some point, she stated that it was incredibly hard to be a woman in the military. My response was that, do you think I didn't have to prove myself as a man in the Army, in the combat arms trade? Did I get a free ride because I was a man? No, I did not. Every day I had to prove myself amongst alphas, to be the alpha, even though I was the youngest person in the room. It was tough. It was incredibly tough. And you don't get a free ride because bullets don't give a crap what sex you are. We are just judged on our commitment to the team. That's what we're judged on. And I know some of you in the past in the military, men and women, have gotten a raw deal. I've had my struggles with the military as well. Nobody is untouched from it. So in a classic tradition, we all watch war movies with a very keen eye for detail. You know what I'm talking about. And there's a pretty good likelihood that you're at some point going to be yelling at your TV screen, and nothing's going to change. Rambo is still going to fire a rocket out of a helicopter, which we all know is impossible. But there are a lot of classic lines, but there's one that's always stuck with me, and it's from the movie Band of Brothers. And Dick Winters is driving with Buck Compton, and he says, "Never put yourself in a position where you can take from these men. Your soldiers must believe, without a doubt, what you are willing to give to them and for them." Perhaps that's why leaders always eat last. The simple things. It has actually been or become a core part of my value system to give and not to take. I'll take my pension though. I still want that to keep coming. Yeah. I kind of earned that with a lot of pain. Given the state of the military now, I have become wholeheartedly disappointed to see the lack of integrity coming from the current serving officers in senior NCO Corps. And this is due to the federal mandates. Except for a very few courageous, currently serving military members, like the 4 that took them to court and the major that blew up his career by doing that message of support. I think in some cases it's just ignorance. And in some cases it's just, I'm following orders. And in some cases I see it as the leadership's betrayal of the soldiers, sailors, and airmen by the cowardly refusal to push back against their government and of their chain of command. And I do honestly feel that the current CDS himself is a disgrace to his uniform. The stories of harassment in Petawawa and Edmonton, and I don't know about Quebec, against the unvaccinated is unconscionable to me. As Drew likes to say, with the article that he was involved in with Barbara Kay, it is the managed decline of the Canadian Armed Forces. In 2015, I medically released from the military and I qualified for a vocational rehabilitation program. And then I went back to school for 4 years, full time. And believe it or not, well, I applied for 70 jobs and I got 2 interviews. I didn't get any offers. This is Canada. It's not a military culture. Our civilian population doesn't know us. They don't know what we can do for them until they give us a chance, which is rare. But you have to accept that. We're not America, where we don't use our military as a stepping stone into a further career. That's just not our way. But once the employers do find us, they never regret it. They know who we are and what we can do and what we can bring, and they're always shocked. When I released, I learned the meaning of a new word: institutionalized. When I left, I knew it was time. I knew it was time. I did my 25 years total. I knew it was time to leave. But I went from being, the second command of all of the infrastructure on the largest Air Force base in Canada with a $50 million operating budget and 300 people to look after, to 5 weeks later being in a classroom with 17-year-old kids that still lived in their mother's and father's houses. That was my new peer group. They didn't have to change, I had to. As a soldier, I learned to adapt to my environment. It's one of the biggest things that we're good at. We go into a new place and we acclimatize and we adapt. And we learn to blend in and to be what we need to be in that moment. It was my responsibility to change who I was to adapt to my environment. And let me tell you, it was difficult. It was difficult to have a 17-year-old kid who could not speak my language, could not understand my mentality. They liked my jokes, but they couldn't understand anything else about me. And I was older than some of their parents. Don't tell anyone that. Yeah, they knew it. They knew it. I was actually older than some of my teachers. So I left the military and I didn't know how to fit in. But I knew that this was going to pass. I knew that sometime in the future, this would be behind me and I would look back on the military as with fond memories. And then in January of this year, I got this call because something came up in Ottawa. And I wasn't going to miss it. I wasn't going to miss it for the world. Within 3 hours of the phone call that I got, I was in Ottawa, right in the middle of the eye of the tornado. And I will never regret that. It was the biggest thing I've ever been involved with in my entire life. It's the most important battle in all of our lives because it's against our own government and it's on our soil. And you can't let that go. And I've often reflected on the fact that I know 10 other officers that are smarter, better leaders, more qualified, more experienced than I am, that probably could have done a better job in Ottawa. But I got that call. I'm the one who got that call. And I was willing to do whatever needed to be done to go to Ottawa and do what had to be done. I don't know why I got that call, but I got it. I saw my opportunity and I jumped all over it. And so did all of you. We didn't end the mandates, but we achieved to restore pride for so many Canadians who had lost it over these last 2 years. Raise your hands if somebody said to you, I haven't been proud to be a Canadian so much than in the last 2 years. Yeah. We've all heard that. We've all said it. We've all felt it. For me, my fight continues because Derek and the team has accepted me on as a candidate in the Ontario Party. If you ever had any faith in anything that I've ever done, believe me when I tell you I made the right choice and I've joined the right team. And these are the people that all put and have had skin in this game over the last 2 years. This is why I joined this party. I believe in their values, I believe in the people, and we have all proven that we've given something that makes us worthy to run in this election. I have never so much as run for high school council. This is the first time I've ever run for anything. It's too important not to. It's just that simple. It has to be done. So I'm doing it. And I want you to know that, tonight I get this great chair at the head table. I sit with these men. We're supported by these phenomenal women that some of you don't know. But I'm not the driving force behind Veterans for Freedom. I'm just a part-timer who is opcom to Derek and the campaign for the election. The real driving force behind this organization, Veterans for Freedom, is Eddie. It's Daryl. It's Drew. It's Sammy. It is Stacy. It's Monique. And my absolute favorite CBC Public Affairs Officer, Jake. And I want to give a special shout out to Brian Peckford. It didn't take a lot of convincing, let me tell you. What you saw in the video with Brian, I can't convey to you the emotion that Sammy and I felt when we were talking to him on that call. Talking to him about the future of this country. And I've said this before publicly, that I was having coffee with Brian Peckford. And he was telling me what their thoughts were when they were drafting the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. In the very moment, our lawyer, Keith Wilson, walked in and told us that the Emergency Act had been initiated. I'm literally sitting with a living legend in terms of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in the Constitution of Canada as it's being stripped out of our hands. I will never forget that moment. You may have heard me say publicly before that the trucker convoy was the People's Emergency Act. I didn't make that line. I got that from Sammy, and he's hiding. Canadians are hurting badly. They really are. I don't have to mention the suicides. I don't have to mention the confusion. I don't have to mention the sorrow, because that's stuff that we're all carrying with us around every single day. And it's brutal. If our society descends into absolute tyranny, we must become leaders in our own way. We must apply all that we have learned and help our communities. We must commit to bold action and moral courage. Because we know that our leaders have neither. Well, they have the bold action when it suits them to call you all misogynist and racist and call you names instead of respect the fact that you're Canadians above all else. So by virtue of being a former soldier, that alone gives you a voice and gives you some power within your communities if things actually start to spiral out of control. If you are a business owner, if you are a manager, if people look to you on a daily basis for guidance, by that virtue alone, you can be a leader in your communities if we descend into a dark place. This is not any individual person's battle. I will not and cannot do it all for you. Neither can Derek. Neither can Jeremy. Neither can these men. Nobody is going to save you except you. And I want to talk a little bit about what we're going to do with Veterans for Freedom. And this is an important thing for people to understand. One of the things we really want to do is build a phenomenal reputation amongst municipalities and law enforcement, so that when we support another organization's event and they say, oh, Veterans for Freedom is helping you with that, okay, we're good. We're happy. That's what we want. We want the anxiety for the cities to disappear so that other organizations can come in and be awesome. That's one of the things that we are going to do with Veterans for Freedom. We are going to aim to always make it safe, responsible, respectable. No matter what BS comes out of the mouths of the mainstream media and the lies that they tell about us, we will always be dignified in everything we do in the media and through our actions and even at these events that we support. We must do this. We cannot be cowboys. We cannot be fringe. We must be beyond reproach. That is the only way that we are ever going to be respected by the communities that are holding the events, the municipalities, and the law enforcement. This is how we avoid having police officers beat the living shit out of veterans in front of national war memorials.
Yeah.
Some of my comments have been a little somber, and I've sworn a few times.
No, you haven't.
No, I haven't. It's customary, usually, that when you're in a large group or you're in a lecture in the military, you usually start off with a joke. I'm going to finish off with a joke. It's funny because it's true. It's 100% true. Years ago, I was posted RSS back to the Niagara region at the Armory on Lake Street. And we got in a new warrant officer Doug Shepard. I know one or two of you at least know Doug Shepard. And the way to describe Doug Shepard, he spent most of his career, you know Doug Shepard, most of his career in the Airborne Regiment. He's bald, he's tattooed everywhere from head to toe, he's extremely fit. And I want to say he kind of looks like a Southern Alabama cracker. Okay, I want to say this. Think Mr. Clean, but from the Airborne Regiment, okay? Without the earring. And he gets posted into the city, and he moves his wife and two boys to the worst possible area of St. Catharines. It's the worst. It's horrible. But he's a fitness freak, so he's out going for a jog, and he's got his two boys on their bikes out ahead of him. And he hears the rap music, the boom, 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 the beat, right? And he's like, okay, what's going on here? Where am I? And his boys are going ahead, and he's starting to get a little nervous. And he looks back, as every military person would. He looks back, and he sees the car slowing down. And he's like, all right, tighten it up. Don't get too far. And he's now got, they have his full attention. And he looks back, and the window comes down, and smoke comes out of the windows. And he's now starting to get, he's going right up to red. And the car's coming up behind him, and it's getting closer and closer, but it's slowing down and slowing down. And finally, he turns to them and he says, you got a effing problem? And the guy goes, no, man, I'm just waiting to turn into my driveway. That is an absolutely true story. And why do I bring that up? Because for all of the somber stuff that I've talked about, all of the things you've heard from veterans tonight or other military, it's our sense of humor that pushes us through the darkness. It's the laughter that we can find in any situation, no matter what. And that's not, just confined to the military. The police do it, the nurses do it, the doctors do it, construction companies do it, truckers do it. Everybody does it. It's not ours to own, but it's the way we as human beings cope. And we find the most entertaining thing that we can out of a horrific situation. And that's why we will always continue to thrive as human beings. With that, I have spoken for far too long. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for supporting us. Thank you for everything you have ever done.